So apparently I was born fluent in telepathy. Wild, right? Well, not really, because the reality is we all were. I'm a telepath, and animals love to tell me that what humans refer to as telepathic or telepathy is actually what they just experience as their nature. It's natural for all of us to have access to consciousness, and communicating through consciousness is our innate ability. It's our native language. Shift your perspective that all you need to do is remember how to be telepathic because you already are. Before I could hear animals clearly, I needed to understand what I refer to as my baseline frequency or my frequency signature. Sometimes we're tired, sometimes we're rejuvenated, but we all have a general baseline frequency. And once I recognized my baseline, I was very clear on what would come into my energy or what I would hear or sense, which was not my baseline. You see, telepathy is not solely non-vocal communication. It's actually sensory perception. To telepathically communicate, which we all do, we might just not be aware of it, is we need to start to utilize all of our senses and attune into our body. There's something called interoception. And interoception is your body's ability to process internal feeling. When you have to pee, when you're hungry, when you're sleepy, interoceptivity is imperative because most of the communication is actually not language being spoken. Animals don't actually speak English or Spanish or whatever their human native language is. They might learn a few words because language doesn't grab all of the communication. Most of us know that. It can be very difficult to communicate our emotions or what's happening or a specific memory or a feeling. But when I can utilize all my senses, maybe an animal sends me an image or they give me a feeling or a memory, then I have a much bigger picture on what it is that they're trying to express. My body hears way more than my ears ever will, and that's where the communication starts. Telepathy is proven. It's science-based. If you want to learn more about it, check out the phenomenal podcast called the Telepathy Tapes, available on any podcasting program. And an important thing to be able to do when you're becoming telepathic is to implement alpha brainwaves into your resting state. Alpha brainwaves is the state we're in when we're in a hypnagogic state. Hypnagogic state is the space just in between waking and falling asleep. It's a highly psychic space because in that zone, we're accessing more of our consciousness. So somebody who meditates is going to have an easier time accessing alpha brainwaves. In being telepathic, there's an innate ability to simply vibrate more into the alpha brainwave zone and pick up on other signals and cues that are in the environment that aren't commonly caught by other people that are not used to experiencing telepathy. Most people aren't in control of their thoughts. It's very easy to impose thoughts onto somebody, hence telepathy. It's a form of imposition, but not one that invades boundaries unless you're really pressing somebody's energy. It's easy to think you're hearing something when you're really just utilizing your imagination or grabbing onto the variety of information in the energetic field. We have to know how to filter out what's real and what's not. And of course, that takes practice, just like anything. But the more I understand my baseline frequency, the easier it is for me to filter out what's authentic and what's not, and also to clarify the authentic baseline frequency of the other person or animal that I'm communicating with. It feels very different than simply mental chatter in the field. The more I trust what resonates, the louder the connection becomes. Telepathy isn't something that's always validated, so it's a huge trust fall. And sometimes I don't trust what I hear. Here's a great example. Last week I had a new client communicate with her cat, and her cat is having some physical ailments. Now, I don't know what's going on. I've never met this human or this cat. She starts asking the cat about what it thinks about going outside. And the Cat starts talking about it doesn't want to go outside because it doesn't want its eyeballs outside of its head. Now, as soon as I'm hearing this, I'm thinking this sounds very strange, but I trust my abilities enough, so I simply go with it. Later in the conversation, it's revealed that the cat is having serious eye issues and that the vet has advised that there needs to be a surgery to remove the cat's eyeballs. It could be very easy for me to doubt my abilities and not say what the cat is saying about the eyeballs coming out of its body, but thankfully, because I did trust in what the cat was saying, it clarified that the cat understood what's happening and wasn't happy with the situation. And the human and the cat got to work that out. But I had to trust in my abilities in order for that communication to happen. One of the weirdest things I've had to learn is that real messages that are often very strange will feel obvious in hindsight, just like the example I gave you. So it's important to compare, contrast, and trust. Real messages resonate, false messages fade. So simply keep listening. A lot of people are surprised at the personality of their pets. They think they know them so well. But if they haven't been able to have intimate, real communications and conversations, there's always going to be nuances about them that are surprising. And that might seem invalidating to somebody who's relaying the conversation. But it's simply areas of their personality and persona that haven't been experienced yet. It's very important to trust. And also, animals are highly prophetic. They often want to relay and communicate and connect, but the feeling and the senses is what's way more important to them. Humans rely more on the words, but the words don't really convey all of the feelings. And also, the words are not the native language to the animal, so sometimes animals will use the wrong words, and we need to understand that. Now, I've been telepathically communicating for over 20 years, and at this point, I stopped trying to tune into the message. Rather, I started simply being the frequency that I was looking for. I understand that I am frequency, and I have access to consciousness in all now moments. And I just live that. Animals also know that you have abilities to communicate with them, and therefore they will come forward more often than not to get your attention. Same with people who have crossed over. And so if you're simply in the energy or the frequency of being able to access consciousness more readily than the average human, then the messages will come and you'll be able to hear it. And when I became more of the frequency and started noticing that it's simply my innate nature, it's natural, then I felt way safer to answer these communications. And also I learned how to build boundaries. Animals have a deep respect for boundaries. It's important to know that different communication styles are going to be very apparent when it is that you're accessing telepathy. And you can trust in that. We're all different. They have access to a lot of abilities, a lot of extrasensory abilities. And they also have the ability to read my own memories. It's like they're sifting through what it is that I already know or have experienced or maybe have communicated or witnessed with other animals in order to try to convey what it is they're saying. They're bonded together in a way where they can ask other animals through the consciousness field to relay communications or offer understandings to help other animals. They have a closer connection and they don't resist this type of communication. The more we tune into telepathy, the more we start to learn about blocks, boundaries, and static noise. When we're not very skilled at telepathy, it can be difficult, as we've already discussed, how to filter out the noise and tune into the frequency, hone in on what's real. Another thing that's important to understand is that if we're trying to communicate with somebody and they don't want to communicate, you might not be hearing something because they've put up strong energetic boundaries. And it's important to learn what those boundaries feel like and respect them. Anytime somebody comes to me to ask to communicate with an animal or somebody who's crossed over, or maybe even tune in psychically to somebody who's not present, I always ask their soul and spirit permission. It is very imperative to understand the karmic implication of overstepping energetic boundaries. There are ramifications and they are very real. For example, I used to live right next to the ocean, and every day I would take my walk on the beach. I'd constantly be trying to communicate with the seabirds. But one thing I've learned about seabirds in general is they do not like to talk. Other birds, yes, but very specifically, the different varieties of birds that I interacted with on the beach did not want to communicate. They don't necessarily want to interact, and they expect us to understand those boundaries. And because of all of these experiences, I've learned that the first step in communicating is making space and allowing for no communication to happen if that's what is preferred. That builds trust and understanding. And there's a lot of communication happening when we're doing that. When we're showing reverence and offering respect that this being or animal doesn't want to communicate, that's a whole world of communication in its own.